you have a very, very interesting background. The criminal defense, the public defender aspect of it is probably most interesting to me, but that's probably the legal nerd and like what you bring to the table. I think our dads would probably be most intrigued by the fact that you have actually presided over both criminal and family cases as a chief judge of 2 tribes in the Western United States. Yeah. So what did you gain in terms of experience? How did that open your eyes in terms of presiding over these cases?
It was very eye-opening to see how lawyers behave, number one, and just to, learn, okay, and start thinking about why did this argument resonate with me over a different argument. It's definitely different sitting up there looking down on people and judging people. I mean, it's a weighty responsibility. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. So going along the lines of that, you mentioned why, like looking at attorneys, why did they act this way? Why did they do this? What advice or what insights would you have for dads based directly on that experience?
So this is another why you should talk to a lawyer and hire one if you can. Take the emotion out of it, which is really, really, really difficult. I've even represented lawyers in their own cases, and they have a hard time taking the emotion out of it because when you're in it and you're that emotional, it's number one, it's hard to see clearly because obviously this is the most important thing to you probably ever in your entire life. And so number two, it's hard to focus on facts and you start to focus in on things that might not necessarily be important. And I say that in quotes because I know to my clients, those facts are very important. But when I'm looking at it from a legal perspective and how to present it to the court, those are facts that the court is not going to, they're either not going to resonate with the court or the court's not going to see it the same way. Does that make sense?
100%. I think that's a really good way of putting it. I put it this way to my clients. There are really 3 pieces to your custody case. You have the mental piece of it. That's the most important piece. You've got to get that right. That's the emotion. That's dealing with all the emotions and everything you're dealing with internally. And then there's the strategy piece, and then it's the execution piece. But if you don't get that mental side right, you're not going to be able to clearly put together a coherent strategy, and there's no way you're going to step in a courtroom and execute on it. So getting that mental, getting those emotions in check. I always advise guys, I say, hey, you can call me and talk to me at any time, but I go find yourself a good therapist. They're much cheaper and they're trained to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's difficult. This is, these are emotional cases. And the reality is, at least as far as dissolution is concerned, Colorado is a no-fault state. So the judge doesn't care about what people care about a lot of times when they're going through a divorce. They just want to hear facts and law.
Yeah, the telling the guy that it doesn't matter anymore that his wife cheated on him can be very challenging to them. Yeah. So kind of along those lines, outside of that emotional piece, sitting on the bench, looking down over these, presiding over these cases, what were some of the most common mistakes you saw men make?
Probably emotion, number one. Anger, especially. There's a lot of anger. I think, men especially tend to deal with emotion more as anger, whereas women are the ones who are breaking down in court and crying. That said, I will say that for men, it's okay to cry in court. It's okay to show emotion and that you really, really care about your kids. I know for a fact that resonates with judges and that they can see that. I mean, judges are human too. So that would probably be number one is, exhibiting any type of anger, especially if someone's making allegations of domestic violence against you. You don't want to, that's, low-hanging fruit that, is easy for a judge to grab on, and you don't want to do that. I think too, what's really hard for a lot of people is setting aside what they want and really thinking about what's best for the kids, which the reality is, what's best for the kids is if everybody can act like adults, get along, and all be on the same page and raise this wonderful human being that you all brought into the world. And that's hard. It is hard to put that aside. But I do think that, I know that resonated with me when I was on the bench, and I've seen it, with judges here in Colorado, that they can see that dad is, taking the steps, and you know what? And some of it is red tape and jumping through hoops, but that shows the court that you are making that effort. And I think, that's something a lot of judges want to see is, you know what, you might not agree with my order, but you understand that it's an order and you're going to follow it and you're going to make that effort. So I think that's it. I think also expectations. The reality is that these court processes, they're not fast by any stretch of the imagination. And so I think people walk into court and they expect, a lot of times in Colorado, the judge doesn't rule after the hearing. They'll take it under advisement for sometimes weeks at a time. It can take months to get hearings. So I think expectations are part of it too. Go in there, knowing that this is a marathon, and not getting discouraged by that. And that there may be, we always say here in Colorado that there are no winners or losers in family law. Nobody, pretty much, if you're going to go in front of a judge, no one's going to be happy, because the judge is going to do something that is going to make you both angry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, I always tell my clients the same thing, that it's in California can take anywhere from 6 weeks to 4 months, depending on the county, to get a hearing. And the likelihood in that initial hearing, if you get anywhere near what you want, is extremely small. You have to play the long game. And I thought you made another really, really good point. Effort. I always tell my clients, do something. If the judge sees you're putting in a ton of effort into getting this right, and to being the best parent you can be, and doing all the right things, they're going to notice that. They may not, it may take some time, because they may have 300 cases on their load right now. They're seeing 80 to 100 cases a week in front of them. But if every 3 to 6 months they're seeing you, and it's like, you've done something more, you've done better, you've taken actions to be a better parent, they're going to start recognizing that pattern, especially if your co-parent isn't taking those steps.
Exactly. And I always tell my clients, let's give the other side enough rope to hang himself. Let's do twice what they do. If the judge tells you to take a parenting class, take 2. If the judge says take, a UA a week, take 3. I think in family law, especially, there's no such thing as overkill on something like that. I think judges want people, for the most part, to be the best parents that they can. And they want to see that they're taking things seriously. And I know, as a judge, there were times when I, maybe had some concerns about drug use with somebody. So I'd say, okay, I'm going to put you on UAs. Here's what I want you to do: get an evaluation, come back in 60 days. And, and there were people who would, oh, that's stupid. I don't have a problem. I'm not doing any of that. Well, if you don't have a problem, I understand that, this might seem stupid to you at the time, but I don't know you. And that's the reality, is the judge doesn't know you. And so sometimes you do have to go a little further to convince them that, hey, I don't have a drug problem. I am not this monster this person is painting me to be. And I'm going to show this to you, judge, because I know you don't know me.
Yeah. They see, you mentioned hour-long hearings. Out here, short form hearings, you may get 5 minutes, you may get 15 minutes. If you get 45 minutes total, I think I've seen one of those ever go that long. I mean, they don't get to know you. And that's why a lot of times in California, they rely on third parties. They bring third parties in to get to know the situation.